my God, it's the most horrible deal in the world. Getting academic degrees in our prisons. Even though this was a terrorist. Are you kidding me right now? He's doing nothing other than good for you. He's saving you tax money. Welcome back from tech to tanks. One thing that frustrates me is that usually in most debates, I try to see the other side, opinion and their perspective. I really try, because if I'm going to debate with someone, I need to understand their perspective. But when it comes to the judicial kind of argument in terms of the judges, the courts, and their power over the government, I can't even understand the other side's perspective. Maybe someone can explain it to me. So let's talk about Israel. Let's rewind. In 1948, the state of Israel was established by Ben-Gurion and a lot of, let's call them left-leaning, semi-anti-religious individuals who I'm not judging because they established the state of Israel, but they'd be the first to say that they are left-leaning / anti-religious. That continued to be the case in terms of who ruled the state of Israel for decades, until 1977. In 1977, Begin won the elections, became prime minister of Israel, and that was an absolute revolution. For the first time, the right had won the election. Now, what does one do when they win the election? What's the first thing that any administration should do, is they replace all of the representatives in all of the different parts of society. Different offices, the judges, everything that existed before you took office that represented the previous administration is replaced. And that's obviously what Donald Trump is doing right now. But that's not what Begin did. He kind of left everybody in place, and that surprised everyone. The reason he did that is he wanted a consensus. He wanted to let, the left and the right continue to rule the country, and therefore to be, consensus between the left and the right, and there to be internal, tranquility and peace within Israel. Big mistake, because that continued to be the case, and that continues to be the case till today. Some people call it deep state, call it whatever you want. The reality is that obviously the right now rules Israel in terms of the government. Obviously, Bibi Netanyahu and his right-wing government are officially leading the country, but in reality, very much not the case behind the scenes. And one of these manifestations, one of the ways that this manifests is, of course, the judges. So let's talk about this. Throughout the last 60 years in Israel, the Supreme Court basically has total absolute power to overrule the government in anything that it says, anything that it does. Which means that if the government passes a law, Bagatz, the Supreme Court, can say, I'm sorry, we don't agree with that law. In fact, I believe the clause is in the law that if they believe it's unreasonable, literally it says severe, unreasonable, then they can overrule it. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that the word unreasonable or reasonable is subjective. So let me just get this straight. If a Supreme Court justice stubs his toe or her toe that morning and they're in a bad mood and the government passes a law, they can overrule it. It's called checks and balances. There's supposed to be checks and balances. So the court can provide checks to the government. Who's providing balances to the court? They can do literally whatever they want. Now, throughout the last 60 years, this manifested in many different ways with many different laws. I'm not going to get into that right now. I want to talk about what's happening right now in Israel and in the United States of America. So what happened is as follows. Bibi Netanyahu has been ruling, as you know, for well over a decade, 15 years, I believe. And that's not very convenient for the left. And they've tried everything, and I mean everything, to bring him down. Things as ridiculous as he took cigars as bribery, to submarine deal that he apparently did illegally, and then the way he handled COVID, and then the judicial reform, which we'll talk about, right? And then the deal that Bibi will never sign because he wants to, keep the war going so he could keep his seat, right? He'll never sign the deal. We should sign the deal at all costs. Bibi and Netanyahu will never sign a deal. That's what they yelled. The next day he signs the deal. Oh my God, it's the most horrible deal in the world. No matter what he does, he will be vilified in the anti-Bibi crowd. And I want to emphasize something. I don't say left. I say anti-Bibi crowd because I don't believe that they represent the left. And I also don't believe that the left is even a thing in Israel anymore. What did the left once represent? Peace with the Palestinians, a two-state solution. I think most people realize that the two-state solution has gone on to a better place. I think most people realize that the Palestinians, as we call them, don't want a state. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. They say it loud and clear. They've been saying it for 60 years. Well, not 60, but since 1964, when the PLO was established, they've been saying what they want. They want all of Israel, from the river to the sea. So the two-state solution that was being dictated by the West is gone. It's over. It's done. So I don't believe that the left even exists in Israel. Yes, there are some extreme lefts that, walk around the streets and pull off signs about the hostages. It's crazy, but those are I would say the edge case, the far left, they don't represent anyone. But the anti-Bibi crowd has hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets. And so what's happening now? After October 7th, for obvious reasons, all of the security leadership of Israel had to resign, right? And so Bibi asked every one of them to put a report of what happened on October 7th on his desk. The head of the IDF, the Ramatkal, did so, and as soon as Bibi had the report, he fired him, rightfully so. The same is true for the defense minister, rightfully so. Let me just open a parenthesis here. Those that might be watching and thinking, what about Bibi? How come he doesn't resign? That's a good question. It's a fair question. In fact, I think that Bibi should take accountability and responsibility, and I think that maybe he should resign, but there are two asterisks to that, two caveats. Number one, we're in the middle of a war, an existential war, and you can't have the prime minister, resign now and go to elections. That would cause absolute chaos in the state of Israel. More importantly, more fundamentally, who's going to replace him, right? The funny thing here is those anti-Bibi people who are yelling and screaming and stomping their feet in the street, not one of them has suggested an alternative. Who's going to run this country? Lapid, the guy who faked a high school degree, a college degree, who lied about his army service, who's a clown, basically. He's going to run the country. Who? Gantz, who we don't even know a single opinion of his on anything. Who is going to run the country? You want to bring Bibi down? No problem. Suggest an alternative and go to elections, right? But none of them have an alternative. So what's happening now? So Bibi requested from Ronen Bar, just to be clear, there's the Shabak and there's the Mossad. The Mossad is the agency that deals outside of Israel, and the Shabak is within Israel. Ronen Bar was requested, like all of the other security personnel, to put a report on Bibi's desk about what happened on October 7th. He has even gone on record to say that he takes accountability. Ronen has said, I take accountability, I take responsibility for October 7th, as he should. So Bibi requested that he put a report on his desk. February 15th was the date that he was supposed to put that report on Bibi's desk. February 15th, Bibi got a letter from Ronen Bar saying, I need a little bit of I need to push it off a little bit. I can't present that report quite yet. Bibi said no problem and pushed it off. And February 27th was the date, I believe, on which he was supposed to get that report. February 27th, Bibi got another letter saying, I need more. I need to delay it some more. And February 27th, that night, Bibi was notified that an investigation was opened against him called Qatar Gate. That's what we're calling it. That Bibi was accused of receiving a bribe from Qatar, an enemy state. So first of all, let's just start with the fact that it is kind of ironic, coincidental, that the same day he was supposed to submit a report showing how he failed, he didn't submit that report, and all of a sudden an investigation is opened against Bibi. You have the most ridiculous story that they're telling us about Bibi and Qatar. Here's the story. You have a guy named Eli Feldstein who applied to be a communication consultant in Netanyahu's office. He did not pass the security clearance test. Now, I don't know what that means because to pass the security clearance is pretty basic, but he didn't pass, apparently. That's so far true. And so, for whatever reason, apparently Netanyahu still wanted him, and so he set up a situation, a mechanism where Eli Feldstein could be paid not from the Prime Minister's office, but through an external third-party source. And which, in and of itself, right away is like, that's a red flag. I mean, does Netanyahu really think that that kind of thing wouldn't be caught in 12 seconds? A little strange, but it gets a lot stranger. The next claim is that there's this businessman who has been pretty vocal about his hatred of Bibi for the past year, who came in and admitted that he is the one that took money from Qatar and gave it to Eli Feldstein. So then you'd say, okay, well then you're guilty, right? You're giving money from an enemy state to someone who works for the prime minister. What does he say to protect himself? Oh, I didn't know that Eli Feldstein worked for the prime minister. So you have someone who hates Bibi, who's admitting that he did something illegal, and of course defending and protecting himself by saying he didn't know, and we're accepting this as a fact. This guy who hates Bibi bribed Bibi's office, and we're like, yeah, must be true if he says it. The thing is it's just preposterous and ridiculous. But you know what? That's fine. We're a democratic state. Let's investigate. But anyone who thinks that it's a coincidence that on that very day that he was supposed to submit that report, that investigation was launched, you're kidding yourself. Okay, this is just another attempt to bring Bibi down. And like all of the previous attempts, it will fail because there is no substance here. Of course, if you're listening to this and you live in the United States, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, this sounds familiar. Yeah, it does. Chuck Schumer, he said that before Biden left office, they put hundreds of judges that literally, he says straight out, progressive judges, I think is what he called them, in courts in order to block Donald Trump. I mean, this is exactly why this whole mechanism is so broken. You can't put judges that are self-appointed, right? No one voted for them, but you can just put them in court and they have the ability to overrun the government. So again, the Biden administration put judges in the courts, knowing full well that they will stand in the way of anything Donald Trump tries to do. And that's the mechanism. The courts can overrule anything. Clearly, we understand how ridiculous that is. And now we understand why the left, for lack of a better term, or the anti-Bibi crowd, was so passionate about, opposing the judicial reform. Because the judicial reform said, we have no problem with Supreme Courts, but we do have a problem with their absolute power. We have to put checks or balances against the courts. So they can't just do whatever they want, and they can't turn into a political movement that overruns the government when, for example, I'll just give an example. When the government passes a law, that we have capital punishment for terrorists, and we have progressive judges who boggles my mind, but still care so much about the rights of the Palestinian terrorists, which, by the way, is a real thing. Just so you're clear. We all know the name Ben Gvir, right? He's, of course, portrayed as this, lunatic right wing. He does have very right wing opinions, but he was in charge of the jails. And he said, why are these Palestinian terrorists getting academic degrees in our prisons? Why are they being fed like they're royalty? And so he changed their terms, and he made it a lot less pleasant to be a terrorist in Israeli prisons. And then comes along the Supreme Courts and fought him on it. So why they're fighting for our enemies, I don't know. But just imagine tomorrow that the government tries to pass capital punishment for terrorists. And the courts decide, no, civil rights, even though they're terrorists, which is, again, something they've done. I mean, we had a guy, this is crazy stuff. We had a terrorist who tried to murder Jews, and then someone who basically eliminated that terrorist. And because he shot him when he was on the ground, he was tried and convicted of basically murder, even though this was a terrorist. Again, Supreme Court. So tomorrow the government decides capital punishment for terrorists, and Bagatz, the Supreme Court, says no. And that's it. It's overrun. This is what we're dealing with right now, and this is exactly why the anti-Bibi crowd fought so hard, because they realize that they're losing all of their strongholds in the state of Israel. And that deep state that I called it before, which, again, you want to call deep state a conspiracy, go right ahead. Call it whatever you want. The reality is that the right in Israel has been in power for decades, and yet the media is left, and all of the, bureaucratic offices are left, and Supreme Courts are left, everything else is left, and they realize they're in trouble because now the media has Channel 14, which is no longer left. Now the media has reporters like Amit Segal, who is anything but left. And they realize they're losing their grip on the state of Israel, and they realize that the Supreme Court was their last chance to maintain their power and control. And so when the government proposed that the Supreme Court's power should be decreased, they freaked out because they realized they need the Supreme Court, otherwise they cannot continue to run this country. So right now what's going on is that Bibi is being investigated for this Qatar Gate thing, and if he and everyone who understands anything understands that it's bogus and ridiculous. But the Supreme Court is basically blocking Bibi's decision to fire the head of the Shabak, which is absurd. Not only do they block his request or his demand to fire him, they literally blocked his ability to interview candidates. Like they said, you could do nothing as it pertains to replacing the head of the Shabak. Like the irony of the anti-Bibi crowd yelling about democracy and how he's going to ruin Are you kidding me right now? In a democracy, there's elections, and the elected official makes decisions. The legislative branch makes decisions, not the judicial branch. And this is what they yell about. In fact, I want to read to you a tweet that I just wrote because I think this sums it up. And I'm going to read it to you because I don't want to miss anything. This is the whole thing. I wrote, the liberal philosophy in 2025. We care about democracy, but we don't accept the outcome of the election because we lost. We care about democracy, but will appoint judges who no one voted for, and those judges will have absolute power to overrule government decisions. And anyone who questions that hates democracy. We care about democracy, but we will take to the streets, assault the police, burn car dealerships, and incite to actual murder. We care about democracy, but if anyone disagrees with us, they are a fascist. We care about democracy, but freedom of speech only applies to us, even though it's among us supporting terror. The other side are Nazis and therefore need to be silenced. We care about democracy, but we will harass, block, and cancel anyone who doesn't agree with us. That basically sums it up. They want to continue to maintain their power across the board, and again, both in Israel and America, and they basically want to make government irrelevant because the government can do nothing unless the Supreme Court agrees and approves. So that has to change, and that is why we needed the judicial reform. And by the way, to be clear, I'm not saying to remove the judicial system and the judicial branch. Of course we need judicial. Of course we need checks and balances. The question is how much power the judicial branch should have, and the answer is a lot less than they have. Again, both in Israel and in America. That's in terms of internal politics in Israel and America. Obviously I can't talk about current events without talking about Israel's renewal of the war on Gaza. It's a whole different ballgame now that Trump is in office. There's no handcuffs on Israel. Israel eliminated, for lack of a better term, 100 pickup trucks, not people, pickup trucks that were used on October 7th to transport hostages into Gaza. In a million years under Biden, that would never have been allowed. Like they would say, you're using our ammunition to blow up pickup trucks. No one's questioning it now under the Trump administration. And the truth is, I don't want to even go there, but anybody who doesn't see that Trump is a real friend to Israel, I'm sorry. Like, there's no other explanation other than Trump derangement syndrome. The reality is Trump has been incredible for Israel. Israel's finally doing what it needs to do in Gaza. It is eliminating Hamas's leadership one by one. Over the past just week and a half, we've eliminated countless Hamas leaders. And Israel's going in on foot, by the air, the Navy, the whole thing, doing what it needs to do. And it will finally obliterate Hamas, something that was impossible under the Biden administration. So that's what you can expect to happen in the next couple of days. Other than that, I think, the world has gone completely crazy. We have Russia, Ukraine, obviously we have China, we have Iran. There's all kinds of rumors about Iran agreeing to potential negotiations. Who knows? Right now, things are very much up in the air and we're waiting to see what happens next. Again, both internally and externally. But one thing's for sure, things are going to get really heated and really exciting. And I don't know if I mean that in a good way in the next couple of days. The left, even the more intelligent people amongst the left, like, are they lunatics? Are they insane? Like, how do you justify, again, just take Israel. How do you justify after October 7th, thousands of quote unquote regular Gazans coming into Israel, murdering, raping, mutilating, and kidnapping, and yet you still think that they deserve a state? Are these people insane? The truth is, pre-October 7th, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they are naive and that it comes from a place of compassion and they want peace, all very positive ideals. But I have a hard time saying that after October 7th. And the truth is, I think, like I said before, there are very few, relatively speaking, real left-wing people left in Israel. But the people who still think that a two-state solution is relevant, the people who still think that Israel should not be at war in Gaza, I'm afraid to say it. I'm sorry to offend anyone, but yeah, I think this is actual mental illness, for real. I cannot comprehend how a person could say that after everything we've been through. So if you still think that Gaza should continue to exist as it did with Hamas ruling Gaza and, a threat on Israel's border, and you still think that Palestinians deserve a state, even though they said very clearly 1,000 times they don't want a state, they want no Israel, then I'm afraid to say you're mentally ill. So the next question was about all the Tesla dealerships going up in flames and fire bombs. And again, the left liberal people, right? If he disagrees with me, I'm going to firebomb his car factory. I mean, this is insane stuff. But, obviously Elon Musk has done this Doge thing, government efficiency, since he joined. And at this point, I don't have the final number, but I'm sure we're talking in the billions of dollars that Elon Musk saved. You've all heard it. Some of the things that America was spending money on. I mean, $50 million to condoms in Gaza, whatever. The list is absurd. I mean, funding trans movements in crazy countries. It's absurd. So Elon Musk found this. By the way, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the United States of America taxpayers were paying Michelle Obama a ridiculous monthly salary since Obama was in office. Look that up. But I mean, it's insane. And so, now Elon Musk is coming and basically getting rid of all the bloat and all the fat and all the money being spent unnecessarily by American taxpayers. And what are these people doing? They're going and they're burning Teslas and, Tesla dealerships and Tesla superchargers, like, around America. Like, this is domestic terror. Again, are these people insane? Like, what? He's doing nothing other than good for you. He's saving you tax money. Like I said before, it's very hard for me to say that the Democrats and those that support the Democrats, at least the vast majority of the Democrats, it's very hard for me to say these people are normal, because just look at the State of the Union, right? I mean, Trump gets up there. You don't want to applaud the things that he's saying. You don't want to applaud, his policy on Israel. Fine. The guy brought up a kid with brain cancer, and the Dems couldn't clap or stand up or give the kid the respect that he deserved. I mean, again, it's Trump derangement syndrome that he could do no right. And so, the fact that Elon Musk is associated with Donald Trump, no matter how good whatever he's doing is, they're going to go crazy and burn down dealerships. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The liberals, right? The pluralists, people that care and say, democracy and everyone's opinion, freedom of choice and freedom of religion and freedom of speech. But if you don't agree with me, I'm going to go burn down your dealership. So, how they don't see that Elon Musk has done nothing but good. I mean, he just brought those astronauts back from 9 months in space, which I'm speechless. Like, how could no one else do that? How could the Biden administration abandon, astronauts in space for 9 months? I don't know. I'm at a loss. But yeah, these people, no matter what Trump does and no matter what his administration and his team does, it's bad. And not only is it bad, but they're going to literally commit domestic violence and terror in the name of fighting Donald Trump, who's the fascist and the felon, and the rest of the stuff that they accuse him of. So, again, the irony, right? They're accusing him of being a criminal, so they're acting like criminals. You can't make this stuff up.